Mr. Ayush Agarwal, Economics Faculty at Manifest IAS. And yesterday we had a discussion with respect to the part A of essay section, okay, wherein we talked about the philosophical essays. And today we are going to the part B section. Okay, UPSC has very clearly segregated between the philosophical essays and generic essays this year. Part A section is completely philosophical essays, and part B section it is generic essays. And as part of part B, we have a total of 4 essays. One is the essay on culture and civilization's interrelatedness. Then the second essay is with respect to the topic of social justice and economic prosperity. The third essay is with respect to the aspect of patriarchy in Indian society, and the fourth essay is with respect to the technological aspect in international relations. So these are the 4 essays which have been asked this year as part B section. And today I'll have a discussion with Ayush sir with respect to the first 2 essays, that is culture and civilization. And after that, I'm going to talk about the second essay topic, that is social justice and economic prosperity. And that is how we are going to take up the discussion today. And Ayush sir has some insights with respect to the essay. Please, sir.
See, in part A, it is more about what you believe is your character, your socialization, and it is also about analysis and linkages with GS paper 4. So the first part largely relates to your personality, your socialization, your outlook towards the world. But what is different in this year's essays are the part B. In part B, there is more interlinkage between the subjects. It is between GS3, GS2. It is between linkages between GS1, GS2, GS3 have been highlighted again, where UPSC is not strictly following the division in syllabus. So we can get a hint towards GS1, GS2, GS3 syllabus as well, which is going to happen today and tomorrow, where there will be more interlinkage between the subjects, between the paper and the syllabus, although it is well defined, but there is no boundary between GS1, GS2 and GS3 anymore. It is basically economics question will be related to GS2, technology question, which is part of GS3, is being interlinked with GS2, which is polity and IR. So you have to study subjects in an interlinked manner, where Manifest IAS also has a philosophy where interlinkages have been focused upon in our current affairs as well.
Yes, sir, definitely. So now we are going to pick the first essay topic, that is with respect to culture is what we have, what we are, and civilization is what we have. Okay, this essay topic, it is actually a little bit theoretical concept, okay, wherein the relation between culture and civilization has been asked, and it has to be explored in multiple dimensions. Okay, and for a topic like this, good knowledge or history is very much required, and at the same time, okay, an exact definition of the words or terms culture and civilization is also required. Okay, when it comes to the word culture, okay, first and foremost, in introduction, this kind of essay, it can be better started with a historical example. And my idea of an introduction for this essay is with respect to the Indus Valley civilization. When it comes to the Indus Valley civilization is a civilization which has occurred in India nearly 4,500 years ago from today. So from 4,500 years ago, the civilization, it was formed and it has declined. But the culture pattern of Indus Valley civilization with respect to the dressing, the dietary habits, okay, with respect to the gods that we believe in, with respect to the ornamentation of women, everything, and urban planning also, they continued from then to now. So it means that civilization is something which is historical. So that is why it is known as what we have. Indus Valley civilization is part of our history and heritage, whereas the culture pattern, it is determining what we are today with respect to our religion, with respect to our dressing, food habits, with respect to our urbanization. In this fashion, you can give an introduction which talks about both culture and civilization in the introduction. So the story of Indus Valley civilization will be an apt introduction for this thing. Then after introducing with the help of Indus Valley civilization prism, okay, what we can do is, sir, next we can have a definition of culture and civilization and theoretically discriminate between these two things. When it comes to culture, culture is more or less, it is a way of life, sir. When it comes to civilization, okay, civilization is the most advanced form of any culture pattern. It is known as a civilization. Usually in Hindi, we have 2 terms. Culture is known as Sanskriti, whereas civilization is known as Sabhyata. Okay, Sabhyata is the most advanced form of civilization which sets standards for later generations, whereas Sanskriti is our culture. So this way we can differentiate between these 2 things, and we can give other theoretical differences also with respect to culture being more internal, whereas civilization being an external form of culture. Then along with that, culture, if you have a look at it, has more or less to do with the things like music, dance, literature, okay, whereas civilization, it is exhibited in law, administration, infrastructure, and social arrangements and institutions of a region. So in this fashion, we can actually have a definition of culture and civilization and differentiate between them. And the essay topic is very clear with respect to telling that culture is what we are today, whereas civilization is what heritage we have at our back end. So in this fashion, we can actually have a difference between these two things. And at the first part, okay, after giving the definition, after giving an introduction with respect to Indus Valley civilization, after giving the definition of culture and civilization, then we can move on to exploring this culture and civilization interlinkages through multiple dimensions, sir. And the first dimension is with respect to the idea of okay, non-violence. I think I, sir, will take it up. Okay.
See, basically, when we talk about non-violence, the history of India, if you study in our from Indus Valley onwards, and Jainism, Buddhism came to India, and also India was a tolerant country where we accepted many religions, we accepted many races, and there's a saying in Hindi also कि कारवां आके बसते गए और हिंदुस्तान बसता गया. और कि कारवां, that means that somewhere we were the melting pot. We hear this line that we are a melting pot of religion, we are melting pot of ideology, tolerance. So this idea of tolerance came from non-violence, and this tolerance gave birth to non-violence. And somewhere this non-violence, when we talk about the nationalist thought in India, which is Gandhiji, or when we talk about Hindu culture, and when we talk about our international relations as well, that India has never been an aggressor country, where non-violence has entered a way of life towards India, where civilization has formed the way of the thought process of Indians towards non-violence. And also, when we talk about non-violence, it is not just violence towards others, it's violence towards yourself also. So if you see, the suicide rates in India are also very less compared to Western countries like Japan or European Union. Why is that? Because non-violence as a form is not just an external thing in India. It is also about internal peace, harmony, which is a thought from moksha from Buddhism. So it is basically a civilizational aspect which we carry forward towards today. And same thing we can say in the form of Karam theory also. When we talk about our texts, for example, when you talk about the Mahabharata, or when we talk about Buddhist texts, it talks about peace, harmony with nature. And that's why if you see the greenhouse gas emissions from India, even those are very less compared to other countries, because somewhere we are carrying forward the civilization aspects of the cultural. So we can say that our civilization found the base, and we are carrying out that base in the form of reformed cultural aspects today, or what we say modernism today.
Yes.
And now I'll hand over to Umesh sir about sculpture, Mauryan realism, and everything.
Yes. See, with respect to what sir has told, I will just brief it. Okay, the thing is, he was talking about non-violence and tolerance being the central values of Indian civilization, which actually determine our day-to-day habits today too. So that is the reason why, see, non-violence as a civilizational value, it is the core tenet of Jainism. Okay, and this same idea was later picked by Gandhiji. Okay, and he formulated a non-violent movement against the British Empire by using these civilizational values of India, and it became part of Indian cultural value system, and it is reflected in multiple number of things. Yes, as sir has pointed out, with respect to the suicide rates, with respect to Indian outlook towards international relations, everything is tethered, or it is based upon our ideas of non-violence and tolerance. That is what sir is talking about, and it was actually a very good example that he has given with respect to the caravans coming to India continuously and India being made continuously, so that we have a developmental idea of Indian civilization. So that way we can actually discuss the first theme of this thing. Then when it comes to the second theme, okay, the second theme that sir has given over to me is with respect to this sculptural art of India. With respect to the sculptural art of India, the classical or civilizational sculpture of India is with respect to the Mauryan age, okay, wherein we see the emblems of Indian images in rock form. Okay, during Mauryan age, for the first time they have emerged, and we know about these things, and they became part of our Indian civilization with respect to the lion image, with respect to the elephant images that were present, okay, with respect to the four lion image. So these are part of our civilization. But the same emblems, they have been picked up later by post-independent Indian government and made into Indian emblem. Okay, we see, if you see, the Indian emblem is the Sarnath pillar four lion sculpture. Okay, that is part of Indian civilization, but it has been adopted as Indian emblem too. So this way we can actually have a discussion on this thing. Then apart from this, okay, with respect to the Upanishadic value system also, you can elaborate upon. With respect to the Upanishads, if you see, sir, the central tenet of Upanishads is Satyameva Jayati. Okay, and this Satyameva Jayati, it became the motto of India even today. So definitely the civilizational value which came from the Upanishad times, that is roughly 3,500 years, okay, not 3,000 years, 3,000 years roughly behind us. this was part of Indian civilization and it has been re-emphasized today as part of Indian culture, and Satyameva Jayate became part of Indian motto. Okay, this way we can actually elaborate one more paragraph on the idea of Satyameva Jayate, and with respect to the system of Panchayat Raj system, sir is going to elaborate a little on this.
See, now as we know that there was system of Sabha and Samitis in the Indus Valley,
Yes.
and there was also representation of women in Indus Valley. And if we talk about laws and practices in India today, we are providing 50% reservation for women in panchayats. So somewhere we are picking up the idea of women rights from our civilization, history aspect, and also we are knowing the value of women from Mother Goddess. Like and where we have these deities, we have the participation of women, and same thing we are trying to embody today in our laws and practices, such as
Yes.
our PRI system, where we come up with 50% reservation for women. And also it is not just about representation of women, it is about participation of people, where these sabhas and samitis ultimately led to the formation of janpadas, and where here also we are trying for grassroots mobility, we are trying for inclusive growth, we are empowering the panchayats. Why? Because India still believes somewhere that a civilization aspect which was very strong has been carried forward in the form of cultural aspects in our PRI institutions, in our participation of people. For example, when we talk about social audit is nothing but carrying forward of the fact where people together make a nation. And the social audit is also a keystone behind the success of PRIs in India. So now when we come to the next aspect is about Natya Shastra, which sir will discuss about.
Yes. See, with respect to the Natya Shastra tradition, okay, Natya Shastra tradition, it is a Natya Shastra text that has been written by Bharat Muni. It is part of Indian civilizational text. Okay, Indian performing arts, most of them they take cue from this Natya Shastra textbook. Okay, what we can do is we can say that Natya Shastra is the civilizational aspect, that is what we have, and it determines our culture today, that is what we are. See, take the case of any standard Indian Sanskrit drama, any Indian standard classical dance or classical music. It is based on the tenets which have been written nearly 1500 years before, during Guptan period. During Guptan period, the civilizational aspect of Natya Shastra has been set. Okay, that is what we have, and it determines the culture of India today. That is what we have, and most of our movies and in our movies also. Okay, we take a cue from the classical music of India sometimes and classical dances of India also sometimes, so that we can give as an example, and it determines what we are today. Okay, this way we can elaborate upon the idea of Natya Shastra. Then apart from that, okay, if you see the ideas of Gandhiji, okay, with respect to the purity and with respect to Swachhata, okay, they are also Indian civilizational values. Okay, and sir will elaborate much more upon this. Yes.
See, when we talk about our grandmothers or when we talk about grandparents, they gave us value system like you have to get up early in the morning, you must take bath early in the morning, you must worship before the sun comes out. And there are some aspects like you should do this before you go to bed, you should brush your teeth, you should cover utensils. And there are some religious annotations given to those topics, like you should not do this with the child, you should do this when child is 6 months old, you should do this when a girl is 18 years old or when the girl is entering puberty. So all these aspects are civilizational values which we have carried forward towards culture today. So when today's modern medicine also sometimes cannot answer the practices which we do, but if you see, those practices have helped us survive as a generation. So that culture is nothing but, now today we talk about revival of Indian system of medicine during Corona, and those systems have been built up over the age of civilization as well. So
Yes.
that culture has culminated into yoga practices also, where yoga is nothing but the continuation of those civilizational values towards today's modern form of modern adaptation of culture, where that culture has been adapted by Western nations as well in their own forms. But today we say that yoga originated from India, and yoga has somewhere provided an answer in this chaotic world, where this continuation, what we say, Indian policies, continuity and change, where yoga is adapting and the medicine is adapting to respond to modern day practices. So simply culture is nothing but modern ideas and adaptation of the civilization in today's world.
Yes, sir
right?
has pointed it out very clearly with respect to the yoga and Ayurveda system. Both of these are Indian civilizational systems, and today we are trying to adjust ourselves to these things, and that is how our culture is determined by our civilization. Okay, and if you see yoga, Patanjali, he belongs to almost nearly 3rd century BC. Okay, then along with that, the Ayurveda system, it was developed by Dhanavarti. Then along with that, Charaka, Sushruta. Okay, all of these are age-old medical practitioners, and today their whatever ideas they have promoted at that point of time, those things we have in texts, and finally we are practicing them as part of our Indian culture today. Okay, and some said and unsaid taught by our elderly people at home, okay, with respect to the habits that the individual needs to have. They also have some civilizational aspects, and automatically they are transmuted into Indian culture of today. Okay, this way we can actually elaborate upon these things. Then we have discussed about the idea of Satyameva Jayati, and with respect to Indian civilization has also the value, or Indian civilization, it got itself influenced by the British civilization too, which is known as Pax Britannica or British peace. Okay, nearly India was 200 years under the British colonial rule, and because of which the British civilization, with respect to the Industrial Revolution, with respect to Enlightenment and other ideas, they percolated into Indian value system. Okay, and today if you see Indian culture, okay, with respect to the culture is what we are. Okay, with respect to this, if you see our adaptation of the language English, okay, and our political and administrative systems, they are all derivative of British civilization. That is how the civilization of Great Britain also had an impact on Indian culture of today. Then apart from this, okay, with respect to the vernacular languages, sir can give a brief on it.
See, basically, when we talk about civilization and we talk about Sanskrit and we talk about in Europe, we talk about Latin, right? So when we talk about Latin and Sanskrit, all the modern scripts, all the modern definitions, all the modern languages are somewhere derived from that language. And where sometimes when we come to the originality of the language, so we have classical language, we have classical script, and we have modern day folk tales. So those folk tales are nothing but the adaptation from Sanskrit and Latin. So if we talk about European languages today, somewhere they derive themselves from Latin, and somewhere Sanskrit is also same, where most of the southern languages and North Indian languages are derived somewhere from the Sanskrit. Now, why is this important? Because when we go back to civilization values, we have to read those civilization texts to form what has been basis today and what has been the continuity today, and what is the value we can learn from the past. See, as we say, their history always repeats itself. For example, that when we were under British rule, we learnt about the English education system when we gained ideas of humanism, liberalism. But some critics argue that there is nothing but that existed in India, although it was just revived during the British time, because of the what we say non-education came down between the Middle Ages. So, and that's why somewhere we can say it is a revival of culture. So revival of culture is nothing but revival of your civilization values. It is about continuity of God, continuity of education, languages, etc.
So, and with respect to the same thing, sir, I just want to just a little bit elaborate on what sir has talked about the classical languages. Even the vernacular languages, they also have unique civilizational history of their own. Okay, with respect to the vernacular languages of South India or North India for that matter, and languages like Urdu, okay, for that matter, all of them, they are derivative languages and they are byproduct of Indian civilization with respect to, okay, their evolution, okay, their evolution from Prakrit and then their standardization during Bhakti and Sufi movement. And today, the language that we speak, okay, they are a derivative from Indian civilization, and it forms an essential part of Indian culture, okay, based on which the language based states were also formed. Okay, that is how we can elaborate on the relation between civilization and culture. Then along with that, okay, we can talk about the values like the composite culture, sir. Composite culture of India, we had discussed the idea of tolerance of India. Okay, this tolerance got itself etched into Indian psyche and mindset during the Mughal period, when a new form of composite culture as a mixture between the Muslim culture and the Hindu culture, it emerged during this period, which is also known as Ganga Yamuna Tehzeeb. Okay, wherein the cultures of two civilizations, they got mixed up and a new composite culture was formed. And this composite culture, it actually forms the basis of Indian secularism on one side and Indian unity on the other. The ideas of a fraternity along with the tolerance of various religions, all of them, they come from this idea of a composite culture. So composite culture of India is a civilizational value, or compositeness is a civilizational value, and it is reflected in our day-to-day activities today too. But some trends of communalism are emerging which are questioning this composite culture of India today. So that way we can actually talk about the civilizational values which got themselves translated into Indian culture of tolerance. Then after that we have the ideas like the Varna system. Okay, yes.
See, in Varna system also, although it was not a civilization value per se, it was more of a tradition based thing, or it was a profession based thing. But if you look at the modern culture we have today, when we talk about urbanization, which was a value during the Indus Valley civilization, now as we urbanize further, we see disintegration of those caste lines again. We see there is mixture of more caste in the professions, and we have Dalit revivalism, where the caste is no longer a barrier for a person to progress, which was the same what was reflected in our civilization before. So it was somewhere when we talk about Mughal culture also, and we talk about caste also, it is the way of life or the culture we have today is more about Sat Vasudev Kutumbakam, which is welcoming all, and inclusive growth. Like this word of inclusive growth, when we talk about our planning, when we talk about 11th plan, 12th plan, and condition of inclusive growth, that growth idea came from the fact that every man is equal, which is part of that British culture also, which is humanism, liberalism, and the equality of man. And also this idea was same in Indus Valley, where the things were noted not in form of caste, but in terms of what we are doing, what is the present status in society. So somewhere this modern world or the modern culture also talks about the economic aspect, where you are valued according to who you are, not who you are, but according to your status, that who are you? Who are you in the sense, are you founder of Facebook? Are you founder of Google? Are you the CEO of this company? So your caste will not matter if you are a CEO. Your caste will not matter if you are a good personality. So it is ultimately boiling down to your abilities, which was also part of our civilizational values.
Definitely. Okay, what Sir is pointing out is with respect to the relation between civilization and culture. Okay, wherein Indian civilization, it has a very, very broad spectrum ideas within it. Okay, and these broad spectrum ideas, some of them are adapted to the modern needs and they became part of our culture today. So that is what Sir is trying to point out. He's talking about the absence of a Varna system in Indus Valley civilization and early Vedic period, where occupation is the most important thing. And today's world, we are going back to the same thing. So in this fashion, our civilization is a broad spectrum civilization. And finally, in conclusion, we can talk about the relation between civilization and culture. Okay, with respect to the civilization, some of the values like patriarchy, okay, caste system, untouchability, and these are the things which have been defeated. Okay, and they have been sidelined, whereas some of other civilizational values which are life affirming with respect to tolerance, with respect to the practices like yoga, meditation, okay, Ayurveda, and these kind of things, they have been revived and they were made part of Indian system today. And this determines what we are to a great extent. Okay, and it gives us our essential identity, both the civilization and culture put together. Okay, civilization gives us the identity, whereas the culture, it gives us the moral framework to function in this world. Okay, this way we can actually conclude this essay and we can wind it up. Okay, and next we will move to the next essay, sir.
Okay, the next essay is about that what is the relationship between social justice and economic prosperity, and what should come, like if I put it in a different way, what comes first, social justice or economic prosperity? So it is asking that is it enough if we just do social justice, or is it enough if we do just do economic prosperity, or somewhere there is a balance between the two? So the essay forces us to think that when we read our standard economics books, we somewhere start with the idea that what is capitalism, what is Adam Smith, what is Keynes, what is Marx, and we somewhere start with the concept of capitalism, socialism, and a welfare state. So this essay tells us to explore why are we studying about capitalism, why are we studying about socialism, and what is the concept behind welfare state. So one can start this essay by giving an ideological framework and by comparing two best known countries on this, that is USSR and USA. So USSR came down to the idea of socialism and communism, where social justice was the primary goal, and USA on the other hand, where economic prosperity was a way of life, where the capitalism idea, that is profit, more employment, more output, was a way of life. But if we look at both, somewhere extreme capitalism also led to Great Depression, and USSR also, there were problems of famine, mass deaths because of hunger, there were problems of human rights, etc. So that is that USSR and USA both alone, if we go, that is economic prosperity alone and social justice alone, will all lead to problems. Like when we look at USSR, ultimately USSR broke up in 1989, Berlin Wall crisis, and also in 91 there was disintegration of USSR, because somewhere the state could not fulfill, the ideas were very strong, but somewhere the resource capacity to fulfill those ideas was not present. But when we come to USA, when we talk about industrial revolution, when we talk about the worker rights there, when we talk about rights of women, when we talk about rights of various groups in society, somewhere those rights were not met, and that's why there were situations of civil war, there was situation of labor uprising, or what we say labor movements in USA, women movements in USA, and therefore it gave idea of advent of Karl Marx, which was about workers of the world should unite against capitalism. And in fact, we say so much so that World War I was nothing but an act of imperialism protest. It was protest against imperialism, because somewhere capitalism became only about a few and not about the rest, right? So somewhere when what we say capitalism, or Adam Smith gave us the thesis, Karl Marx gave us the antithesis, and somewhere welfare state became the synthesis of the ideas. So when I talk about welfare state, I'll ask Umesh sir to elaborate further
Yes,
on welfare
definitely.
state.
Sir has given a very good introduction with respect to the comparison between USA model and USSR model, wherein USSR it pursued social justice at the exclusion of economic progress, whereas USA pursued economic prosperity at the exclusion of social justice. Okay, and in both countries, their models were not very successful because in USA it led to the crises like World War One and the emergence of the ideas of socialism, women rights, workers' rights, and stuff. Whereas in USSR's case, okay, the ideas were very strong with respect to social justice, but the resources were not enough, as Sir has pointed out, which is actually a very good point. Okay, then based on that, what Sir was talking about is two ideological systems, that is socialism and capitalism, being thesis and antithesis, and finally a synthesis in the form of welfare state has emerged. And see, in the introduction, we can give this example, and then we can elaborate upon various dimensions with respect to this discussion. Okay, and as part of this, Sir was asking me to elaborate upon the idea of welfare state. Okay, wherein the welfare state is a state which is paternal in its outlook. Okay, wherein it considers itself, it gives enough freedoms to people to progress economically, and at the same time, it oversees the welfare of everyone. Okay, it tries to give everyone equal opportunity. Okay, wherein people can become or people can determine their own destiny. At the same time, the people who are not capable enough, okay, to pursue their dreams, and who are not very well endowed by providence, okay, by providence or by God, if they are not very well endowed, then the state will enter the picture immediately in order to take care of the poor, okay, sometimes the disabled, sometimes the weaker sections of the society like women, untouchables, and castes. Okay, this form different sections of the society will be taken care by the welfare state. So this way we can actually have a discussion on the welfare state idea in a small paragraph. Okay, then we'll move to the discussion on the various dimensions of, okay, how if we exclude social justice from economic prosperity, okay, the problems might come. And at the same time, the other dimension is with respect to how if you pursue only social justice at the exclusion of economic progress, what kind of problems can come. And finally, we can conclude. Okay, and the next dimension is with respect to the concept of affirmative action, which Sir will speak about.
See, when we talked about the problems with capitalism, so the capitalism responded with the idea of free health, like NHS in UK, free education, or what we said the Beveridge report in UK came in 1944, where we talked about the concept of welfare state. But somewhere, as Umesh sir also talked about, that welfare state is not only about that whether you can participate, it is about broadening the participation, it is about broadening the outlook, or what we say today's concept is inclusive growth or inclusive development, where we talk about affirmative action. Now, what is this affirmative action about? It is about social justice to women, to black people in USA, to caste system, SC, ST in India, or tribals in India. So the affirmative action is about the helping those people who cannot help themselves. Now, when we talk about economics as a concept, when we say there is policy, we say program, and we say scheme. Now, we say policy is a broad target, what we want to achieve. Program is for everyone. But when we say scheme, have you ever heard a scheme for general category? No, right? Why? Because scheme is for helping those who cannot achieve by themselves. So affirmative action is nothing but policy of reservation, policy of some subsidies for girl child, subsidies for SC, ST. Why? So that they can participate more in society, right? But at the same time, this subsidy has to be given by the government. So government needs some resources or economic prosperity. That is what we say proportional tax system. But somewhere that tax has to be filed, the tax has to be collected. So economic prosperity is the basis for providing that. See, now when we talk about India as a country, from 50 years, our original constitution said that we'll remove reservation within 10 years. But somewhere our state capacity was not enough to bring everybody at par within 10 years. And we see that reservation policy is still continuing because of the lack of economic progress of India in the first 10 years. So somewhere economic progress is inhibiting the fact that social justice, although it's a good idea, but somewhere resources are required for the practice of social justice.
Yes.
That's why we come to the next point, which is what is the capacity of a developing country and what's the capacity of a developed country to ensure social justice and economic prosperity is in harmony with each other. So when we come to developing country, we often find that the savings are high, but the savings are not enough to fulfill the aspirations and need of all the people, such as free healthcare. Now, India also tried to give universal PDS, but we cannot because it will overshoot the fiscal deficit targets. Then at the same time, when we talk about Corona, everybody talks about that why is government not giving so much of stimulus package? But somewhere, if we give stimulus today, it will hurt us down the line somewhere. because if we don't show economic progress, that is, the economic progress is the basis for providing social justice. But at the same time, when we look at developed countries, there are many countries like USA where economic progress has led to discontent with the government. There is problem of what we said disenfranchisement with the government, like when we saw the march on Capitol Hill day for yesterday or
Yes.
2 days back. That was nothing but the extreme form of capitalism where developed countries has not been fulfilled. The developed countries are failing at the idea of maintaining their institutions because of lack of spending in social sector. So somewhere we have to maintain a balance between economic progress and also society, and that is what the next topic is also about, especially with regard to women, because in the last 2 years you might have seen that UPSC is also focusing more on concept of gender related development. So Umesh sir will more talk about
Yes.
what's the role of social justice and economic progress with respect to women.
Yes, definitely. And sir has pointed out with respect to the comparison between developing and developed world, which is actually a very good example. Okay, even in the case of India too, only post 1991 reforms only that we got the enough economic resources in order to back massive government spending on social sector like MGNREGA, okay, right to food, all of these things, they were only possible only post 1991 reforms. Okay, whereas in developed countries, if the spending is not there on the social sector, okay, there are continuous riots against the government, there are problems against the government too. Okay, these things can be picked up a little later. And with respect to the gendered nature of economic growth, okay, with respect to economic growth is linear. Okay, sometimes economic growth for the sake of economic growth is not a good idea. Okay, growth for the sake of growth is the idea of cancer cell. Okay, usually only cancer cells have this idea of growth for growth's sake. The growth should finally translate into development for the sections of the society. And here in this respect, women's participation in economy and the benefits for women who are participating in economy is one very important concept. And economic progress alone will not help women to get empowered. Okay, positive social action, positive government action towards the sections or towards the women, okay, is something which is very critical for bringing about social justice along with economic growth. Okay, take the case of today's India, wherein most of the companies CEOs are men. Okay, women's participation in economy, that too in high-tech economy, is comparatively less. Okay, whereas women are delegated the works like agriculture, okay, wherein we see the concept of feminization of agriculture. So that very clearly shows that women are being burdened, but they are not being given enough rewards in economy. So for this, there should be affirmative social action. We can give the example, you can use the example of gendered based economic growth, okay, which is actually you can elaborate upon that too. Then along with that, okay, sir will talk about the Jasmine Revolution or Arab Spring, okay, where, yes sir.
See, now when sir talked about 1991, before 1991, we had mission-based approaches in India. Why mission? Because somewhere government knew that we cannot fulfill the aspiration of people because they don't have the resources. But 2005 onwards, as our economic progress happened, we see conversion of mission-based approaches into rights-based approaches.
Yes.
And somewhere right to work, right to information, right to food, and somewhere now we are talking about rights to women. For example, in this budget, we talked about age of marriage for women. We talked about gender budgeting as a formal process.
Yes.
Why? Because somewhere women rights also matter.
Yes.
And also we talked about transfer of this corona relief package in the name of women.
Yes.
Like the women members were given the
Agency.
DBT.
Yes.
And also various schemes like LPG, Narega, all have been given preference for women. Why? Because somewhere we saw that affirmative action, despite having affirmative action for SC, ST, caste system, others, somewhere women got left behind. But when we come to this concept of rights and missions, the good example here is about Jasmine Revolution or Arab Spring movement, where the oil money was very good money, and the kings and queens in Arab world were focusing on the economic prosperity. But somewhere they were not giving these entitlements. What Amartya Sen talks about: endowment, entitlement, self-rights, sustenance rights, human rights or self-value. That got missing between the Arab people, and somewhere there was a revolt against the government in the form of Arab Spring. And somewhere it was a pro-democracy movement. Somewhere it was a lack of social justice due to economic prosperity. That it was the people were asking what is due to them. Right? So somewhere it was the discrimination between the provinces. And when we look at popular civil war movements, or wherever we have civil war, it is nothing but a problem of economic prosperity and lack of economic justice or lack of social justice. For example, when we talk about Sri Lanka, LTT movement came because somewhere the Tamil community in Sri Lanka was not getting the adequate share of resources. Somewhere when we look at your Syria and ISIS, that is also the same thing. And when we talk about Naxalism as well, Naxalism is also somewhere where land reform was making economic prosperity only for a few people, and majority of the people were not getting benefit because of the land system there. So that's why in India also we can quote about Naxalism. Now, sir will talk about more about Venezuela and Bolivia.
Yes. See, when we can give the contrary examples with respect to where social justice was pursued today at the exclusion of economic prosperity, there also there is no peace because the resources are not enough to cater to everyone. The best example is Latin American countries of Venezuela and Bolivia, where social justice is given more importance, but economic prosperity is not given equal significance, because of which there is unrest, okay, in Venezuela, and the economies, they are falling. Okay, the economies, they are falling, and they don't have any international aid or support today, because of which reason the Venezuela, we see a crisis today. There was protests against the government because people were demanding for more economic liberties, okay, because they want economic prosperity to be achieved by themselves, not to be, okay, dependent on the state. Okay, so that way we can see that pursuing social justice alone at the exclusion of economic prosperity in today's world, not just about USSR, like Venezuela and Bolivia, there were economic problems because it is unsustainable. So at the same time, when it comes to the next one, okay, we can talk about the issues like tribal welfare and environmentalism and development-led displacement, which I sir will explain.
See, when we talk about economic prosperity, so somewhere when we talk about tribal revolts in India, or when we talk about situation of the tribal movements in India, so when we say when we build a dam, so because of dam, there is a lot of displacement of people. So if we don't rehabilitate those people properly, so what will happen? Ultimately, economic prosperity will also suffer, because somewhere when you want to make the industry, people will be reluctant to give their land, because if they are not satisfied, that then land acquisition issues will come up, environmentalism will come up. So somewhere economic prosperity can also break down if there is no social justice. So we see the attraction, like if we take West Bengal as a classic example today, West Bengal has failed somewhere in doing social justice to a lot of people, right? So somewhere because of that, the business people are also reluctant to go to West Bengal. So I would say social justice will form a base. The idea of social justice should form a base. At the same time, there should be liberalism, so that there is enough capacity of state to ensure social justice happens on time. For example, when we talk about PM Kisan also, that why are we able to transfer that 2,000 rupees? Because somewhere government has the capacity to pay that money, right? So somewhere reforms have to go hand in hand with social justice. So if you oppose either of them, although it should be in balance, it should not be extreme capitalism versus extreme socialism. So the ending part is very crucial here, where you have to talk about a balance between what is individual rights, group rights, rights of people, rights of the businessmen. So it is not only about individual, it's about individual. So somewhere when we talk about the ideological perspective, I would say Gandhi's talisman is a very good example here, where the country should take a decision keeping in view the poorest person's face, right? So it is economically, if I take a decision that should I go ahead with this project, so I have to think somewhere that will it benefit the common man, will it benefit the poorest person I have seen. So it is somewhere economic prosperity, if it is not matched with social justice, it will always lead to problems of civil war, discontent, opposition to you, and there'll be popular agitation. Like for example, during this farmers movement, we see that the farmers are destroying the geo towers, although geo is not involved in farming there.
Yes.
So somewhere because of lack of prosperity also and lack of social justice also, there is a revolt against the state. So economic prosperity will fail if there is no social justice, and social justice will fail if there is no economic prosperity. So somewhere the balance has to be maintained. And the best example I can give here is, if we say in Indian Constitution also, there is fundamental rights and there is DPSP. Like fundamental rights are the basic forms of social justice which are required to survive. That's why we say Article 21 is a right to life. But when we look at DPSP, DPSPs have so far not been so effectively implemented just because there is lack of economic prosperity. But so what is the way forward for India? Although disinvestment is important, but this investment has to be done in keeping in mind what is the welfare of the people. It is not, should not be the biggest garage sale in history like what happened in USSR, where there is a lot of corruption, where there was a lot of what we say chronic capitalism. So even our economic survey mentioned the word chronic capitalism, and we have to move away towards behavioral economics, where chronic capitalism will lead to problems of social justice, and there has to be a balance between economic progress and social justice.
Yes. Finally, a concluding remark from my side would be we can talk about we should have a system wherein there should be compassionate capitalism and at the same time liberal socialism. Okay, both of them, if they are balanced very well in the society, then automatically economic progress can go hand in hand with social justice. That is how our priorities and our value system should be there, and this way we can give a conclusion to this essay, and this finishes the discussion on this essay. Fine, thank you.
So coming to the next essay, which is about patriarchy and Indian society. So I'll ask Mrityunjay to start.
Yeah, this particular topic is about patriarchy, and we have to give care to each and every word that has been given in the topic. That is, patriarchy is the least noticed, at the most significant form of or structure of social inequality. So, when it comes to patriarchy, yeah, patriarchy is there, but the author is saying that it is least noticed. Though there are many, like high volume debates about patriarchy, and like patriarchy is one of the main things in our society which get batches all around. But the thing is, here the author is saying it is the least noticed. That means somewhere this patriarchy has ingrained into our culture. And when we were discussing about the topic of culture and civilization, yes, we have seen the certain cultural aspects that we have shed. For example, sati. For example, child marriage. Time and again, like whenever these things are irrelevant, we have tried to shed these things. So, similarly, patriarchy is the thing which we are not able to shed even in the 21st century. And it is present in the feeblest form or in the very vibrant form. But it is leading to one of the structure of social inequality. When it comes to social inequality, there are many forms of social inequality. Maybe it is the inequality between rich and poor, inequality among classes, inequality among castes. So there are many inequalities that is existing in India. But here the author is saying like this is one of the social inequality that is existing in India, and it is telling about the structure. Okay, so when we talk about other inequalities, the worst form is this gender inequality, because here we are cutting the whole society into two, that is male and female. Other types of inequalities, there are many divisions into that, but here we are directly cutting into two halves. And when we start the introduction, so we have to start with a very creative piece, or we have to start with a very lighter form of this, or the lighter explanation of this topic, and later we can pick up. So initially we have to take any one incident where like patriarchy is visible or it is present in the very feeble form, and then you have to write about the thesis, like how you are going to build your essay. Then kindly explain these words, like what is patriarchy and what is social inequality. Then you have to take the different ideas and proceed. And while you write about this patriarchy and the social inequality, in your second paragraph of body, there you can bring some of the aspects that are present in our culture since many days. So for me, like I'll go to the ancient literature. So when we go to the ancient literature, maybe it is like any vernacular language in India. So always the women has been portrayed as the supporter of men, because we don't have like the ancient literature which have come up on the object of any female. So always as a mother, as a sister, as daughter, or as wife, the the female characters have come. So that is how the history is ingrained even into our education system, or into our like moral stories, or into our pedagogy. So basically the very good aspects like courage, bravery, all those things we try to attribute it to the male, and all the submissive characters or like non-vibrant characters we try to give it to the female. That is how we can see it in the ancient literature. But when we comes to the very difference between male and female on the biological aspect, so Ayush sir will elaborate on that aspect.
Now, since beginning, when we look at movies or when we look at television or we look at bringing up of a child itself, we have different toys for girls and we have different toys for boys. And also, somewhere there's a notion that boys don't cry and girls cry. And sometimes it's like a slang that you are a sissy, like you are told as a boy that you are a sissy, or you are a, what we say, you are acting like a girl. So sometimes that biological difference gets inherited from our upbringing, our socialization. That girl, you are like a girl, you should not behave like a girl. Girls will be given toys of kitchen cooking, and boys will be given toys of gun fighting. So somewhere that notion of patriarchy is ingrained as a child itself, subconsciously. It is not done by conscience. When we know somebody has a girl child, we will buy the gifts according to our boy, and that is where the patriarchy gets ingrained into us. And also, the disturbing fact is that this patriarchy is carried forward by the woman itself. For example, the grandmother or the mother itself carries on this form of patriarchal nature into the mindset of the people. Now, the feeble perspective which is given is about the biological constraints, such as, that 5 days of menstruation period, that girls are weaker than male. But if we look at history also, there are silent examples such as Lakshmi Bai, where the girls have outperformed males in terms of bravery, where women also have got a late chance in joining the armed forces, but they are proving their mettle. So it is not only about biological constraints. So that's why why are we saying it is silent? Because so far until today, it was overlooked. And now probably we are having a relook at the patriarchal nature of our society again. And somewhere, as Sir talked about, that movies which are coming like Thappad and NS10, which are highlighting the fact, look, the feeling of girl is also important. It is not just a male. The women work is also important. And probably during Corona, when we have work from home, this is highlighted, because in work from home, we are seeing that before female were supposed to do the housework and what we call double burden of work, and where the female was supposed to take care of the office and work. But now when the women are at home, people are realizing, no, because now for the first time, the males have seen what is the life of women. So somewhere that question of silent patriarchy has come back into nature. So therefore, now when I'll talk to Mithun sir about more about what is how it is in the form of naming, such as him, her.
Yeah, basically, when we look into our textbooks, maybe right from our ancient literature or to the modern textbooks, always like we use the pronouns like he, him, or his. So, whenever we are talking about the third person, so it is always about, like we use that he, his, and him, because it has come into our, like the subconscious mind that we are not willingly using them. They are coming very naturally to us. So whenever we say the evaluator, for example, evaluator, he gives less marks, or he sets, like the question paper setter, he sets like very tough paper, or teacher, he. So like that, it has been completely ingrained, and it is very tough to like shed that, and we have to cross centuries to shed that. And when it comes to the choice of the girls, so right from the childhood, as sir was pointing about buying gifts or like buying like toys for the girls, from there only we start teaching the girl that you have to be like a girl. And we have seen in the earlier essays also, the female is the biggest enemy of female, because the stories are taught by grandmother and mother and how they have to be. And even in the worst form of like this patriarchy, what we have seen is the elder girl in the family is escorted by the younger boy in the family. So basically, whenever Didi or the sister, like elder sister, is going out, then we give the security person as the like the younger boy. So that is how it is. And whenever you are trying to like cross your village, whenever you are trying to cross your city for studies to go to other cities, then like this question will come, like, girl, she is girl, how she would manage. So since she is a girl, like what all are the difficulties? So that will come to the person very naturally. Okay, since she is girl, she can't do this. Since she is girl, she can't do this. But as far as the boy is concerned, like those notions will not come. And when it comes to the choice of hers, so choice of hers are dictated by many factors like this. Her security issue, that is one factor. And her like safety, so that is one factor. And when it comes to her liking, like hardly those things matter. For example, for her studies, they are, I mean, those things are dictated by someone else in the family. And for example, she wants to go to another city for higher education, but since the options are available in the same village or same city, she will be forced to take those options only. And when it comes to marriage, so in our Indian culture, so it is mainly about, like choosing the bridegroom is the, like responsibility of girl's parents. So just she has to agree. But nowadays they are changing. But when you look into the larger aspects of our society, like rural India, so these are even relevant today. And even with respect to motherhood, whether she wants it or not, at certain age, for example, usually around 16, 17 girls get married. By 18, 19, they become mothers. Whether their body is ready or not, or they want or not, whether their mindset is ready for bearing the child or not, that is not checked. So it is up to the male who decides whether like that person wants to have a child or not. And whenever the girl obstruct these things, and whenever she tries to assert her right, then we say you are talking too much or you are crossing your limits. But already the men have crossed their limits. So here, whenever she opposes a small thing, then we take it for our ego. Like patriarchal mindsets are defined like this. So the male ego comes out even between the working, like wife and the working husband. So her duty has to be compromised for most of the times. So like these, there are so many, like things which have got into or ingrained into our culture unknowingly, or as sir told, unconsciously or subconsciously, they have ingrained into our this thing. When it comes to marital rape or domestic violence, sir would brief upon that.
See, now when we look at surveys like NFHS or National Family Health Survey also, it is clearly saying that institutionally also, girls have a very less choice of contraceptives, where they don't have the choice itself of when to become mother. So it is not about the behavior pattern at home, it is also about the institutional aspects of patriarchy which are silent. For example, NFHS survey clearly states that girls have very little choice about contraceptive measures, whether when to become a mother. And also, when we look at the institutional aspect, we hear the words like chairman, not chairperson, and we hear the word director, which are also not gender neutral. And also, the workspaces are not gender neutral. So, when we come to this aspect of domestic violence and marital rape, we always see that the girl has to be submissive. They must have food after the boys have left. They must, their nutrition aspect, if we see 50% girls going to NFHS are having anemia or they're having some form of deficiency. That means somewhere the entitlement or access to food within the house itself is going down. And when we talk about marital rape or domestic violence, we see often that the cases of rape and violence is often from the family members itself. So it is not about the society in general, the public sphere. The patriarchy is somewhere affecting your private sphere as well. And this private sphere is not about, now there is one misconception that the rape happens only if somebody is not educated or if somebody is having drug abuse or if somebody is having a history of criminal records. We see it is not a concern regarding education. It is not a concern regarding your status in society. We see this happening in even households which are highly educated, in households which have no criminal record, which have good position in society. So somewhere it is the mindset which has to change. It is the, which is the, what we say, socialization of the, or what we say, deep ingrainment of patriarchy has happened. And somewhere that is making rise of this marital rape. That means what? That the woman will not have a choice. And women cannot say no. Just because you are married, so you have to say yes, you have to follow your husband, you have to touch his feet, you always follow him. And even our traditions like Karwa Chauth, or I'm not saying that the traditions are bad, but the traditions reinforce the patriarchal nature, where marital rape and domestic violence issues become day-to-day affairs. We are not able to overcome these aspects. Despite having good laws, despite having awareness generation of these laws, like Ring the Bell campaign and everything, but still, women somewhere feel insecure that even if police help them, institutions help them, their position in society will be degraded, because the public sphere, their name will get tarnished and they'll not be able to go anywhere else. They'll be treated as a, what we say in medieval era, we used to hear the word witch, and the witch will be burnt on the stake. So somewhere a modern day version is not burning, but somewhere worse, where your image gets tarnished. And that is why we talk about adultery, where the adultery definition is what? Where the male might also be at fault, but the woman is always tarnished. Male is not tarnished, the woman is tarnished. And
even for that matter, like when we have seen amendments into the adultery laws and all, indirectly it is, what it is institutionalizing the extramarital affairs of the man. But in the same way, the law is very silent upon the extramarital affairs of the women. So here, men are allowed to have extramarital affairs, but women are not supposed to have. So this is how even it has been, gone up to our lawmaking also, or even when it comes to the other aspects of our, like society, like these are the very bad things. And when you talk about triple talaq, this patriarchy, it is not restricted to only one religion or one caste. It is all over. So across the religions, across the caste, we can see this. Triple talaq is what? Just uttering of three words or one word three times. Like that makes that the like that pious bonding between husband and wife is broken. And she's on the road. Like what about her economic aspects? Like how does she take care of the family and the self? She doesn't have the autonomy. So when it comes to the economical aspects, even today, like we don't consider the care economy into our GDP. See here, one person is completely involved into 24/7 job of the house. So when we try to demarcate between the goods and services, that is the biggest service that we are getting in our household. But that is not materialized, or that is not counted at all. That is not estimated. So the care economy is left out. So if we take the care economy, maybe the GDP calculation or the value addition that we are doing to our national income, so that completely gets varied. So when it comes to the economical aspects, even working women, like she, as sir told, like she get the double burden. One is the work burden. She has to work like men, and when she comes back late to the house, even she has to listen like why it is so late, and why are you the only person who is working on the face of the earth? Or when she comes earlier, what do you do at office? Like you come so early, like you don't work in the office. Even at the office, when she goes late to the office, so other colleagues of hers, like she gets to hear. And when she leaves the office very early, then also, so whether you do this thing or that thing, she is going to, like get tarnished. And as far as our comments are concerned, always, like most of the people, I'm not talking about the very well educated or something, like always there are, like the jokes or the sadistic or satirical jokes, always they are cut on the wife or the woman. So this is how, like so many, like aspects have made us to go into that patriarchy, and unknowingly we are getting into those things. And recently, I would say, with respect to the Sabrimala judgment.
So when we talk about subliminal judgment, and we see, last sir were talking about the jokes. Sometimes when we see somebody driving very badly, we always say that a woman must be driving, right? So somewhere that ingrainment, and when we talk about the previous aspect like violence, adultery, and we always blame for women dressing. Like we say that women might have dressed or women might have attracted. We don't see that the male might have also done it, right? So somewhere when we talk to subliminal judgment, it is also based on the fact which is ancient in nature. For example, although that temple was passing through a wildlife sanctuary and there might be many tigers during that time, and where the tigers might be attacking, but today in the modern age, those ideas are obsolete, and where the difference of or the biological constraint of what we say mensuration, everything are outdated aspects, because before there was nothing called sanitary pads. Before it was, now there is technology. So technology has helped us overcome many disabilities. The same way women, we know that those things exist today, and those things have to be taken into account in today's practices, and we have to modernize our culture based on the need of society today. And that is what is required in Sabramila, or not only this temple, in many temples the women are not allowed entry. And same is going to caste system as well, where the temple entry movement is supposed to be having equal opportunity for all. Now, if you look at it in a different way, when we say that women dress like this and that's why this does not happen, but if you look at the Western world, the consumerist movement, the economic prosperity comes only when women start spending money. When they buy cosmetics, when they buy clothes, it gives experience economy. It gives, like if you go to a normal showroom of Zara, if you go to Lakme, those are the products which are expensive. Those are the things which bring you up. For example, the whole fashion industry of France, Italy, UK, the whole industry that is based on women economy. And that is what we sacrifice if we don't correct these things today. So we have to allow or be progressive about, temple entry movement. We have to be progressive about religious reform, rights of women, their economic prosperity, their participation at home. And that is what we talk about in the form of care economy and glass ceiling, which sir will elaborate.
Yeah, when it comes to glass ceiling, like women have certain obstruction in the upward mobility in the offices, because there are certain things which are biological, that is like childbearing, like maybe it is with respect to the maternity leave that she puts or the child care leave that she puts, and that is very much formal these days. They can take child care leave and the maternity leave, and that may hold her back in the in the aspect of promotion and all. So when it comes to government sector or the public sector, there are many laws which are taking care of the women. Maybe it is with respect to maternity benefit act. So maternity benefit act, it is allowed in private sector also, but the thing is, here in the government sector, as the philosophy of the government, like they will take care. But when it comes to the private industry, like while hiring only, they will be having such inequality. Like why would we hire? Because she is in the fertile period, she is married, okay, there are chances that in next 5 years she is going to take maternity leave. So why we should take that brunt for our finances? So let us not select only. So who is going to address these things? So like that, there are many effects like glass ceiling effect that we have. But what is the solution for this? Okay, as the civil service aspirant, while we are writing the essay, like we have to give the solutions to it. So solution, as sir told, it is about technology. It is about technology. We have to bring in the change. So it can be the equalizer. Technology can be the equalizer.
See, for example, now we have change in work from home rules, where work from home rules will be allowed and government will support work from home as an aspect. So this is a big jump where women can equally participate. During maternity also, they can have some part-time work at home. And you all have heard that Yahoo CEO, she joined work right after her delivery, one day after delivery. So therefore, it is an accepted fact in the Western world where women have equal rights. But somewhere in India, silently, they have not been able to overcome these aspects of glass ceiling, where women can also become bosses of men. Here, the bosses of men are ridiculed, or they are sometimes put that she is attractive, that's why she got the promotion. And somewhere, when a girl is above you, you always think negatively, that we think that she must have done some favors or you must have done something nice, and that's why she got the promotion. But somewhere we discount the fact that if you look at 10th board exam, if you look at IIT results, who is a topper? It is mostly girls who are the topper. The girls are performing better than males. So somewhere we have to remember the fact that it is somewhere their capability which is bringing them up, not the glass ceiling according to the way they look, the way they dress. It is the capability of a person also.
Yeah, concludingly, we have a remark like along with the technology, again the education. It is not about the sex education. Sex education is about biology. It has to be gender education too. So gender education right in the primary level and the high school level we have to bring in. And finally, we have to see to it that at least by next few decades, we have to see that the women are not facing the issues which are social. Yeah, biological, she can't avoid, it is a fact. But social issues, at least, she should not, see. And finally, we have to establish a just and a equal society. So that is how we have to wind up this essay. And I think we can move on to the second essay. Then this essay, again, as sir told in the beginning, that most of the essays are interdisciplinary these days, especially in the part B. That is, like in this essay, technology is the silent factor in international relations. So here we are covering IR also. Along with that, we are covering SNT. So when it comes to technology, it is not just about the information technology that we are seeing around. Technology is what? The science is engineered into certain applications. Yeah, that is what is technology. So science is the fact. We see fact and we try to emulate that fact we engineer certain things, and finally we get the technology. So that is how it is. So when you look into the history, our industrial revolution 1.0, so there we try to mechanize so many things. So mechanization, what did it do? Due to mechanization, the productivity of the industry was more and the production was more. And when it comes to the production, then definitely the market. So when we look for the markets, then definitely we are looking forward for the other countries or other part of the world. That is how the imperialism and the colonization came into its place. And in this essay, you can take any small object of technology and you can, brief upon it, how it is dictating the international relation. Then you have to write the thesis statement, then explain what is technology and what is international relation. So when we start this essay, in the first part of the body, we have to begin like this. Technology can be seen from the perspective of a soft power. Soft power, like it is based upon skill. Most of the soft powers are based upon skills. Like skilled or semi-skilled people, yeah, they tend to produce too many things. And India has proved to the world that through its technology, through its soft power, it can have, its dictation or its effect on the international relations. For example, the Western world, where the most of the IT enabled services are done by Indian companies only. And that is how it is dictating. And when it comes to the hard power in terms of the strategic relations. So on that thing, how technology is going to dictate the hard power, that will be briefed by Ayush sir.
If when we come to our defense capabilities, so we have certain relations with USSR, we have relations with Israel, we have relations with USA, just because they are technologically advanced in the defense equipment which we need, right? For example, we take missiles and radar systems from Israel, we take tanks and planes from USSR, and we took, and somewhere now we are shifting towards USA because of the technology factor itself. So it is not about the soft power itself, but also hard power. And if we have this hard power, if we display this properly, probably we'll build up our relation through our capabilities. For example, now India is thinking about exporting Akash missiles or BrahMos missiles to Vietnam, to African countries. So it is about building an export market for our defense products and also having a supply chain as part of a global supply chain. Now, when we talk about technology here, when we talk about US relationship with India, suppose US wants to use our Indian air bases or US wants to use our naval bases. So it is also about integration of technology which brings nation together. So that's why we have repeated what we said defense exercises, where we try to bring about harmony between nations. And at the same time, we talk about world problem like combined effort towards ending terrorism, peace in the Middle East, where all nations carry forward this agenda of synchronization of their technology so that they can effectively deal with world problems like disaster management. And somewhere it gives rise to institutionalized capacity like UNSC reforms and everything, where we bring about hard power. But when we come to goods and services, it is also about technology transfer, which Nitya sir will discuss.
Yeah. As we have seen the soft power and hard power, how it is going to, or how it is dictating the terms in international relations. Similarly, the goods and services, goods, right from this, like as small as smartphone to the services like IT enabled services. Yeah, this is going to define our trade relation in terms of goods and services. And beyond that, the remittances that a particular country gets. So in terms of remittances, India is doing very well because of its, the IT enabled services and the people who are there in the other country who are working as engineers. Like when it comes to such remittances, maybe it is from the software industry, maybe it is from the civil construction industry, or maybe it is from the scientist fraternity. We are getting a lot of remittances. So when you talk about the international relations, basically the strategic, so that we defined in the soft power and hard power, and secondly is the economic prospects. So these are going to define the international relations. So these are the main aspects that we have to bring in essay. And since we are writing for civil services in India, definitely we have to focus on the Indian aspects as the supplier of technology, and second as the consumer of the technology. So how it is going to define our relations with other countries. So as the supplier and as the consumer. So that will be briefed by Ayush sir.
Now, when we look at a choice of technology available for a country or as a choice of country which we can provide to the world. Now, there are certain aspects like sanctions, like UNSC, like your nuclear test sanctions, those come into play. So when we discuss the next aspect, which is about tool of security also. So there were certain times where technology was not accessible towards India. For example, the after Pokhran 2, there was some talk of sanctions. We also had some stoppage of nuclear fuel. So this technology itself sometimes becomes a binding factor in your nation's progress. For example, medical isotopes, which have dual use technology. For example, nuclear technology can be used for medical science, and also it can be used for war. A missile can be made, or also you can launch a satellite with it, which can provide telemedicine, teleeducation, because the technology remains the same. So here, as a tool of security, also it is very important to use technology in an effective manner, in a non-destructive manner. So if you look at case of Iran and North Korea today, they also have the technology, but they should use the technology for the benefit of people. And this usage of technology itself defines your international relation, your standing in the world order, where Iran and North Korea often get the title of rogue nations, and where India gets the title of responsible nation. So your position, as a leader of developing country, why is India called a leader of developing country? Because it has been able to demonstrate technology used in the form of good security, helping nature of people, etc.
So when it comes to the like a leader of the developing country, so this is very much evident through the technology that India is like trying to exhibit. For example, when it comes to the pharmaceuticals, so India is called as pharmacy of the world because it is doing the like the altruistic things in Africa. It is supplying a lot of medicines to Africa. And when it comes to the satellite building, ISRO is not just a like scientific body. It is also a commercial body, and it is catering to the needs of many countries now. And when it comes to the other altruistic things like satellite, SARC satellite. So SARC satellite, South Asian satellite, we try to launch on behalf of the 8 countries. And when it comes to the civil works, for example, in Middle East or in Afghanistan, to be very precise, like there we have built roads, we have built dams there. So we are carrying a lot of development works. So that is how India, along with its like foreign policy like NAM 1.0 and NAM 2.0, it is taking the technology into those countries. And actually, India is using the technology as the defining point for the international relations. And when it comes to the other aspects, like India as the receiver or the consumer of the technology. So since beginning, since 1950s and 60s, maybe it is for the missiles or for the satellites, we dependent upon Russia, like even for the warships, and even for that matter, like even the nuclear reactors. For example, in Kudankulam, we have VVER that is supplied by Russia. And when it comes to the arms and ammunitions, like from Israel we take, and when it comes to dryland agriculture, we bring a lot of things from Israel. And when it comes to the other things, like even from our neighboring countries, like we get too many like supplies, maybe that is for the trade relation. So when it comes to the international relation, as I told earlier, the strategic relation and the economic relations, so they are the main part, and they are going to take everything forward. And the very next aspect of the international relations is the geopolitics. So geopolitics, so even the technology is defining the geopolitics. So that will be briefed by Ayush sir.
So now when we come to geopolitics, it is about the strategic position of India vis-a-vis rest of the world. For example, India is strategically positioned to control the high seas in the Indian Ocean, and we are strategically positioned to counter China as part of the international shipping lanes. So why does technology matter here? So technology here will define whether India has the capacity to undertake large port projects, to handle very large crude carriers, to handle, what we say, your ICTT, which is International Container Transshipment Terminals, which we are trying to build in Madurai, Madras, Kochi, everywhere. Why is that necessary? Because in this world of global supply chain, where the parts are not manufactured in a single country, the parts are globalized. Like some part may be manufactured in India, some part may be manufactured in USA, some part in Australia. So this technology integration is defining international relations, and this global supply chain is defining international relations. In the recent past, the geopolitics, how is it coming into play? There's a worldwide movement towards protectionism against China. So and there was a policy called China Plus One strategy, where the nations wanted to move away from China. So therefore, it was very important that technologically India also steps forward and it becomes part of the global supply chain. And this is seen in day-to-day policy making as well. When we talk about PLI scheme, which is production linked incentives, it is somewhere incentivizing the people to invest or bring technology to India and build up the foreign relations with India in terms of trade relations, investment relations, and also to build supply chains from India using India as a base. And India is also putting the best foot forward. It is training its people, as sir said, that because of the trained workforce, we were getting remittances from abroad. But at the same time, now those people need to work in India and the companies should come to India. So we are changing our nature and impressing upon the geopolitics of India as a manufacturing base, and that is what we call make in India strategy. And then how is it a negotiating factor for us? Because, for example, we have a huge middle class. So the companies are attracted towards India, seeing the market in India, and therefore they want to build good relations with India. And that's why when they talked about RCEP, TPP, they took India into confidence. They tried to take India into confidence because it is not just technology, it is the base of manufacturing, it is the base of low cost labor, it is a market for them. So it's also part of negotiation tactics.
Yeah, when it comes to negotiation, like we have seen, especially in the nuclear technology, like India didn't have a like very easy ride as far as its international relations are concerned, because India has tested Pokhran, yeah, and it invited like all P5 countries, like kind of a what bashings. And since then, India is not allowed to enter like any kind of nuclear agreement. For example, NSG, there are many like impediments like while India is joining. So these technologies, like maybe it is with respect to the nuclear fuel or the nuclear technology that other countries are having, so they are not allowed to like pass on that technology to or the nuclear material to India. So this is how the P5 countries are negotiating through their technologies, or like their what you can call as the power or the collective power. So like this, it becomes the negotiator also. So when it comes to India's like fortune, so definitely India has lot to do as a negotiator in these aspects, because India is progressing technologically. So that is how in the future also India is going to define its international relations on the basis of technology.
Now, when we come to generic medicines, like generic medicine supply, it was often blocked because of WTO, or we could not supply low-cost medicine or antiretroviral therapy to Africa. Where that's why when we talk about vaccines and biopiracy, Indian government or India negotiated hard in WTO, and we got the Brazilian Declaration signed, which allowed for export of low-cost medicine to developing countries, or what we say South-South cooperation. So through negotiation tactics in vaccines and negotiation tax and biopiracy, which is, for example, we could protect our intellectual rights for neem and haldi, which was illegally patented by USA. And we try to negotiate on behalf of all developing countries together, which is protection of our ancient knowledge and IAS system of medicine or Indian system of medicine. So how is it negotiation? Because we are not only protecting rights for us, we're protecting rights for the broader developing countries, protecting rights for such as Indo-Africa Forum, where we try to protect their rights and our rights together. That's what makes us different from other countries like China, USA, USSR. So for us, it is like not only a panacea, but also a strategy to safeguard the rights of others. So technology is not just an enabling factor, it is also about morality. In India, it is also about consciousness, it is also about humanism in India. So that's why when we talk about destroyer, wars and weapons, then sir will explain more about that.
It is not just about the good things about the technology. So always we have seen that if the technology has crossed its like usage threshold, or like its utility threshold, like it has always caused the problems. For example, like Nagasaki, Hiroshima, what we have seen, like that is like due to technology only. So similarly, in the world politics, like we have a lot of hegemony, and a lot of monopoly based upon the technology. For example, the biotechnological aspects. For example, we have BT cotton, and we are talking about GM mustard or BT brinjal. So all these things, basically it is defined upon the technology only. So the companies like Monsanto, like, we are very apprehensive about such things. So this technology can be utilized for the deterrence also. So like that, when it comes to hegemony or when it comes to monopoly, like, they are taking the technology to the worst levels. But finally, like, we have to use everything. Maybe it is technology, maybe it is another tool, or maybe it is any construct of human mind. So that has to be utilized for the peace, and mainly the world peace. So finally, in the concluding remark, we should not turn a blind eye for the problems that technology is, like, bringing in the international relations, or how it is cutting on the negotiating power. So definitely we have to, like, keep an eye on the negative aspects also. And finally, while we are briefing, we have to end with a very, futuristic or the optimistic thing. That is, finally, the aim is to establish the world peace, that is to which India is adhering since many years, right from our NAM 1.0 to the present NAM. We want to establish the world peace. That is how we have to end. So by this, we come to the conclusion of the essay discussion of essay topics. So you have seen the part 1 discussion yesterday, and today we have discussed the part B. So through this, we are trying to educate, or we are trying to help the student community or the aspirant community how you have to brainstorm into different aspects, and how you have to make your essays very unique. When it comes to the part A and part B, part A has a different bent of mind, and there the abstractness has to be held into few examples. And here, when it comes to the disciplinary aspects or the general essays or the specific essays, here we have to make our dimensions more. So we have to bring in a lot of dimensions. As a concluding remark, Ayush sir will brief, like, how exactly we have to handle such situations.
Basically, whenever there is interrelationship between different papers like GS1, GS2, GS3. For example, here also we see technology is part of GS3 and IR is part of GS2. So you can fall back on examples. For example, world peace search. So you could also say like International Solar Associate, like that International Solar Agreement is there, which is part of that Paris Climate Deal. So as a concluding one, what is that example of world peace you can give? It is about technology transfer for green technology, like solar panels. If it is shared all over the world, it will not only help India, it will help the entire world in becoming more green. So in this, you need more dimensions, and dimensions have to be explained using examples.
Yes.
Because in your normal GS answer, you don't get space to express your examples freely. But in an essay paper, you can freely explore examples. You can explain to the examiner that this is how it is practically observed in the world. So your idea in example, or in the first part of the essay, for example, in part A, it is the idea and your socialization. In the part B, it is your idea and the example, which will fetch you more marks.
Yes. So by this, we want to conclude this session. Hope this was very helpful. We enjoyed it thoroughly. Hope the same case is with you. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.